Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderbolt, staring at the massive dark shape floating in the void ahead of them. The ship had been drifting in empty space for weeks, maybe months. Its hull was torn and twisted, with holes punched through it like someone had used it for target practice. "What do you think, Captain?" asked Lisa Chen, the chief engineer. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who could fix anything that broke on their ship. "Never seen anything like it before." Jake nodded slowly. The alien vessel was 3 times larger than their own ship, and it looked like it had been through hell. Strange symbols covered its hull, and the metal itself seemed to shimmer with an odd blue-green color that hurt to look at directly. "Danny, what are your sensors telling us?" Jake called to his science officer. Danny Rodriguez looked up from his console, his face pale. "Captain, there are no life signs on that ship. Whatever crew was on board, they're all dead now. But the weird thing is the ship's power core is still running. Life support is down, but the main systems are active." Amy Foster, their communications specialist, turned in her chair. "Captain, I'm picking up some kind of automated distress signal. It's not in any language our computers recognize, but the pattern suggests it's been broadcasting for about 2 weeks." Jake thought for a moment. They were the first human ship to venture this far from Earth, exploring the edges of known space. Finding an alien vessel was exactly what they had hoped for, but not like this, not as a floating graveyard. "All right, people, we're going aboard. Lisa, Amy, you're with me. Danny, you stay here and monitor everything. If something goes wrong, you get us out of here fast." The 3 of them suited up and took a small shuttle to the alien ship. Up close, the damage was even more obvious. Whatever had attacked this vessel had used weapons that seemed to melt metal and twist it into impossible shapes. Some of the holes were perfectly round, as if something had simply erased parts of the ship. They found an airlock that was still working and managed to get inside. The corridors were dark and filled with a strange mist that their suits' filters couldn't quite clear. Emergency lights flickered on and off, casting weird shadows on the walls. "This place gives me the creeps," Amy whispered over the radio. They made their way to what looked like the bridge. There they found the crew. 7 alien beings sat at their stations, all dead. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. Their hands had 3 long fingers each, and they wore uniforms that looked almost military. "These are Kethvar," Lisa said, examining one of the bodies. "I've seen pictures in the intelligence files. They're supposed to be one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy." Jake nodded. The Kethvar Empire controlled dozens of star systems and had never lost a major battle. Their ships were famous for being nearly indestructible. Yet here was one of their vessels, torn apart by something even more powerful. Amy was working at what looked like the main computer terminal. "Captain, I think I can access their logs. The translation program is working on the language." "Do it," Jake said. The alien writing on the screen slowly changed to English words. Amy read them out loud as they appeared. "Fleet Commander Sektar, personal log, final entry. We have encountered a single vessel of unknown origin in Sector 7 Delta. The ship identifies itself as human, designation HSV Defiant. This is impossible. Our intelligence reports show that humans have barely left their home system." Amy paused as more text appeared. "The human ship has requested that we leave this area of space." Commander Zelketh laughed and ordered the fleet to attack. "We had 300 ships, 300 of our finest battlecruisers. The human ship was alone." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Humans didn't have any ships called the Defiant. Earth's entire space fleet consisted of 12 vessels, and none of them had ever left the solar system. Amy continued reading. "The human ship opened fire. I have never seen weapons like these. They seemed to tear holes in space itself. The first wave of our attack simply disappeared. Our weapons passed through their ship like it wasn't there." The text was getting harder to read, as if the person writing it was in a hurry or injured. "Ships are dying all around us. The Defiant moves like nothing I have ever seen. It appears in one place, destroys 5 ships, then appears somewhere else instantly. Our fleet is being torn apart. In less than 3 minutes we have lost half, Our forces. Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. Captain, if this is true. Keep reading, Jake said quietly. I am ordering a retreat, but the human weapons seem to ignore distance. They are destroying ships that are light minutes away as easily as those close by. The Defiant is not just a ship. It is something beyond our understanding. The final entry was short. Only 17 ships remain out of 300. The human captain is speaking to us again. She says we are free to leave, but we must never return to this sector. She sounds polite. Like she is asking us to leave a dinner party, not flee from the greatest military disaster in our history. I am setting our ship to jump to hyperspace. If anyone finds this log, know that humanity is not what we thought. They were. They are something far more dangerous. The log ended there. Jake, Lisa, and Amy stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, Jake spoke. We need to get back to Earth. Now. They gathered as much data as they could from the alien ships, computers, and returned to the Thunderbolt. During the journey home, they studied everything they had found. The evidence was clear. Somehow, somewhere, humans had built a ship that could destroy entire fleets in minutes. But who had built it? Where was it now? And why didn't Earth's government know about it? As the Thunderbolt entered Earth's solar system 3 weeks later, Jake knew their discovery would change everything. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and apparently, they were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The question was, what would they do with that knowledge? Jake called his crew together one last time before they reached Earth. Everything we found stays classified until we can figure out what's really going on, he told them. If there's a human ship out there with that kind of power, we need to find out who's controlling it and what they plan to do with it. Lisa nodded. Do you think the Defiant is still out there? Jake looked out at the stars and wondered how many other alien fleets had encountered humanity's mysterious guardian. I hope so, he said quietly, and I hope they're on our side. Admiral Rebecca Hayes sat in the secure briefing room deep beneath the Pentagon, staring at the holographic display showing the damaged HFY ship. Around the table sat the most powerful people on Earth, President Charles Blake, Defense Secretary, Ryan Cooper, and Dr. Patricia Wells, the planet's leading expert on alien technology. Let me get this straight, President Blake said, rubbing his tired eyes. A single human ship destroyed 300 alien warships in under 10 minutes? Captain Morrison nodded from his seat at the far end of the table. That's what the logs show, sir. The HFY are not known for lying about military defeats. If anything, they usually make their losses sound smaller than they really were. Defense Secretary Cooper leaned forward. But we don't have any ship called the Defiant. Hell, we barely have 12 ships total, and none of them could take on a single alien cruiser, let alone 300. Dr. Wells had been quiet during most of the briefing, but now she spoke up. I've been analyzing the weapon signatures found on the HFY vessel. The energy patterns are unlike anything in our current technology, but they definitely have human characteristics. What do you mean? Admiral Hayes asked. Every species develops technology in slightly different ways, Dr. Wells explained. It's like a fingerprint. The way humans build power cores, design weapons, even structure computer code, it all has distinctive markers. These weapon signatures are definitely human in origin. President Blake stood up and walked to the window, though it only showed the underground parking garage. So someone on Earth built a superweapon and didn't tell us about it? That's what we need to find out, Admiral Hayes said. She turned to a man sitting quietly in the corner. Kevin, what did your people find? Kevin Stone was the director of Central Intelligence, a thin man with gray hair who seemed to know everyone's secrets. He opened a thick file folder. We went back through 15 years of classified projects, he said. Most of them were dead ends or were canceled due to budget cuts. But we found something interesting. He placed a photograph on the table. It showed a middle-aged man with wild hair and thick glasses, standing in front of a complex machine. Dr. Jonathan Gray, Kevin continued. Theoretical physicist, specializing in dimensional manipulation and exotic energy sources. He was working on a classified project called Operation Prometheus. The goal was to develop new types of weapons based on manipulating space and time itself. Dr. Wells picked up the photograph. I know, Jonathan. We worked together years ago. He was brilliant, but some of his ideas were considered too dangerous. What happened to the project? President Blake asked. Kevin flipped through several pages. According to official records, Dr. Gray's research station suffered a catastrophic accident 15 years ago. The entire facility was destroyed, and Gray and his team of 12 researchers were listed as killed. Admiral Hayes frowned. Listed as killed? You don't sound convinced. Because I'm not, Kevin said. I've been digging deeper. The accident report has inconsistencies. For one thing, no bodies were ever recovered. The official explanation was that the explosion vaporized everything, but that doesn't match the type of damage described. He placed another document on the table. More importantly, 3 days before the supposed accident, a large transport ship left the research station. The flight plan listed it as carrying equipment to a classified location, but there's no record of it ever arriving anywhere. Dr. Wells studied the papers. You think Jonathan faked his death and continued his research in secret? That's exactly what I think, Kevin said. And I think he's been out there for the past 15 years building things that would make our military leaders very nervous. President Blake returned to his seat. But why? Why would one of our own scientists go rogue and build weapons without telling us? Admiral Hayes had been thinking about this question since the briefing started. Maybe he didn't go rogue. Maybe he was protecting us. Everyone looked at her. What do you mean? Dr. Wells asked. Think about it, Admiral Hayes said. 15 years ago, we barely knew aliens existed. If Dr. Gray discovered something that convinced him humanity was in danger, he might have decided to prepare defenses without waiting for government approval. Defense Secretary Cooper shook his head. That's a lot of assumptions. Maybe, Admiral, Hayes agreed. But it would explain why this defiant ship is protecting human interest without making contact with Earth. If Gray is out there, he might be running his own private war to keep us safe. Kevin Stone closed his file folder. There's only one way to find out. We need to locate Dr. Gray and his team. How? President Blake asked. If they've been hiding for 15 years, they're probably very good at staying hidden. Dr. Wells had been quiet, but now she looked up with excitement in her eyes. I might have an idea. Jonathan's research was based on dimensional manipulation, right? That kind of technology would create very specific energy signatures. If we scan deep space with our most sensitive instruments, we might be able to detect traces of his work. Admiral Hayes nodded. Do it. Use every satellite and deep space telescope we have. If there's a human ship out there with this kind of power, we need to find it. President Blake stood up again. What if we can't find them? What if this Dr. Gray decides we're a threat to his operation? The room fell silent. Finally, Captain Morrison spoke up. With respect, sir, if Dr. Gray wanted to threaten Earth, I think he would have done it by now. The fact that he's been protecting human ships suggests he's still on our side. For now, Defense Secretary Cooper said grimly. But what happens when other alien races find out about this? The Kethvar might have been the first to encounter the Defiant, but they won't be the last. Word is going to spread. Admiral Hayes felt a chill. Cooper was right. In a galaxy full of hostile alien empires, having a single super weapon might not be protection. It might be a target painted on humanity's back. We need to be prepared for that possibility, she said. If alien fleets start coming to Earth looking for the Defiant, we need to be ready. President Blake looked around the table at the faces of his advisors. All right, Dr. Wells, start your scans immediately. Kevin, keep digging into Dr. Gray's disappearance. Admiral Hayes, prepare our fleet for possible alien contact. He paused, then added quietly, and God help us all if we're wrong about Dr. Gray's intentions. As the meeting broke up, Dr. Wells approached Admiral Hayes. Rebecca, there's something else. Something I didn't want to say in front of everyone. What is it? Jonathan's research wasn't just about building weapons. He was working on theories about parallel dimensions and alternate realities. If he's actually succeeded in that research, the Defiant might not just be a powerful ship. What else could it be? Dr. Wells looked worried. It might be something that exists partially outside. our normal space-time, something that can draw power and knowledge from sources we can't even imagine. Admiral Hayes stared at her. Are you saying Dr. Gray might have built something that's not entirely from our reality? I'm saying, Dr. Wells replied quietly, that we might be dealing with something far more complex than just an advanced human ship. And if I'm right, finding the Defiant might be the least of our worries. Supreme Commander Zenthkara of the Valdaran Collective stood before the massive display screen in his flagship's command center, watching the reports come in from across the galaxy. The 8-foot-tall alien had scales like dark metal and 4 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. His species had conquered 17 star systems through pure military might, and he had personally commanded fleets in over 50 major battles. He had never lost a single one. Commander, his intelligence officer reported, we have confirmation of 3 more incidents. Human ships have appeared in the Korvax sector, the Theta Prime system, and near the Helix Nebula. In each case, they destroyed entire military fleets and then disappeared. Zenthkara's primary arms crossed while his secondary arms operated the control panel. How many ships did we lose in total? Over 800 vessels from various member species of the collective, sir. The humans appear to have multiple ships with similar capabilities. Another officer approached, this one from the reptilian Sarek race. Commander, the Kethvar Empire has formally requested protection. They claim humans destroyed 300 of their ships in a single engagement. Zenthkara laughed, a sound like grinding metal. The mighty Kethvar asking for help? I find that hard to believe. Sir, we have the battle recordings from their surviving ship. The engagement lasted 9 minutes and 14 seconds. 1 human ship against 300 Kethvar battlecruisers. The laughter stopped. Zenthkara turned his full attention to his intelligence officer. Show me. The main screen flickered to life, showing the final moments from a Kethvar ship. The view showed hundreds of massive warships in formation, their weapons charging to fire. Then a single, smaller ship appeared in the center of the formation. Enhance the image of the human vessel, Zenthkara ordered. The ship was sleek and dark, maybe half the size of a Kethvar cruiser. It had smooth lines and no visible weapons ports. It looked more like an exploration vessel than a warship. Now show me what happened next. The recording continued. The human ship seemed to flicker, becoming partially transparent. The Kethvar fleet opened fire with everything they had: energy beams, plasma cannons, fusion missiles. The weapons passed right through the human ship as if it wasn't there. Then the human ship fired back. Zenthkara had seen many different types of weapons in his long military career, but nothing like this. The human ship seemed to create holes in space itself. Some Kethvar ships simply collapsed into points of light and disappeared. Others were torn apart by forces that twisted their hulls into impossible shapes. A few ships tried to retreat, but the human weapons struck them across distances that should have been impossible. How is this possible? Zenthkara whispered. His science advisor, a floating jellyfish-like creature called a mentor, drifted closer to the screen. Commander, our best theories suggest the humans have somehow learned to manipulate dimensional barriers. Their ship exists partially outside normal space-time. Can our weapons hurt something like that? Unknown, Commander. We would need to test our most advanced weapons against similar technology. Zenthkara made a decision that would have consequences across the entire galaxy. Send word to all member species of the collective. I want every available ship to gather at the staging area near Wolf 359. If the humans have this kind of power, they represent a threat to everything we have built. His intelligence officer looked nervous. Sir, that would mean assembling over 2,000 ships, the largest fleet in collective history. Good, Zenthkara said grimly. We will demand that the humans surrender these super weapons to collective authority. If they refuse, we will destroy their home system as an example to any other species that might develop similar technology. 3 weeks later, the massive Valdaran fleet gathered at the edge of human space. Ships from dozens of different species filled the void. Angular Sarek destroyers, massive Thulic battleships, swarms of small but deadly Zephyr fighters, at sea. The center of it all was Zenthkara's flagship, a kilometer-long monster bristling with weapons. Open a channel to the human home world, Zenthkara commanded. The transmission was sent toward Earth, and after a few minutes, a response came back. A middle-aged human in a dark suit appeared on the screen. The translation computers identified him as President Charles Blake. "This is the President of Earth," the human said. "To whom am I speaking?" Zenthkara stepped forward, all forearms spread wide in a display of dominance. "I am Supreme Commander Zenthkara of the Valdaran Collective. You will immediately surrender the ships responsible for attacking our fleets, or we will destroy your entire solar system." President Blake looked tired, like he had been expecting this conversation. "Commander, I appreciate your position, but we don't control the ships you're talking about. They operate independently of Earth's government." "That is unacceptable," Zenthkara snarled. "You will surrender these weapons or face the consequences." "I'm afraid I can't surrender something I don't possess," President Blake replied calmly. Zenthkara cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare to attack. Target their largest cities first." But before the order could be carried out, alarms began sounding throughout the flagship. The sensor operator called out in panic. "Commander, we have a contact, single ship, appearing directly in front of the fleet." On the main screen, a familiar sight appeared. The same sleek, dark ship from the Kethvar recordings materialized out of empty space, tiny compared to the massive alien fleet, but somehow radiating a sense of power that made everyone on the bridge step back. A new voice came over the communication system, calm and professional. "This is Captain Laura Bennett of the HSV Defiant. You have entered human space without permission. I'm asking you politely to withdraw your fleet and return to collective territory." Zenthkara stared at the small ship surrounded by his enormous fleet. "Captain Bennett, you are outnumbered 2,000 to 1. Surrender immediately or we will destroy you." There was a pause. Then Captain Bennett's voice came back, and Zenthkara could swear he heard amusement in it. "Commander, I need to ask you to reconsider. I really don't want to have to destroy your entire fleet." Zenthkara's rage exploded. In all his years of commanding fleets, no one had ever spoken to him with such casual dismissal. "All ships open fire. Destroy that human vessel." 2,000 alien ships opened fire at once. The space around the Defiant filled with enough energy to crack a moon. Plasma beams, fusion missiles, particle cannons, and exotic weapons from dozens of different species all converged on the single human ship. The human ship didn't even try to dodge. When the light faded, the Defiant hung in space exactly where it had been, completely undamaged. It seemed to shimmer slightly, as if it existed just slightly out of phase with normal reality. Captain Bennett's voice came over the radio again, still perfectly calm. "I really wish you hadn't done that, Commander. Now I have to respond. What happened next would be remembered across the galaxy for centuries to come." The small human ship began to glow with a soft blue light, and suddenly, Zenthkara's instruments began detecting energy readings that broke every scale they had. "All ships retreat," Zenthkara shouted, but it was already too late. The Defiant opened fire. The first shots from the Defiant were almost gentle by comparison to what would follow. Captain Laura Bennett activated something she called the Dimensional Cascade Array, and suddenly the small human ship seemed to exist in multiple places at once. Zenthkara watched in horror as his sensors showed the Defiant appearing simultaneously throughout his fleet formation. "Impossible," whispered his science advisor. "No ship can be in multiple locations at the same time." But the evidence was right there on their screens. The Defiant was everywhere and nowhere, existing in the spaces between normal reality. When the alien weapons fired at it, they passed through empty space while the ship itself attacked from angles that shouldn't exist. The first wave of destruction took out 50 ships in the space of 30 seconds. The Defiant's weapons were unlike anything Zenthkara had ever seen. Some shots created tiny black holes that crushed entire battleships into points of light. Others seemed to simply erase sections of ships from existence, leaving perfectly smooth holes where armor and hull used to be. "Return fire," Zenthkara screamed, but his weapons officers were already trying. The problem was that they couldn't hit a target that existed partially outside normal space-time. A group of Sauric destroyers tried to surround the Defiant, firing from all directions at once. The human ship responded by creating what looked like a tear in space itself. The tear expanded rapidly, and anything that touched it simply vanished. In seconds, 12 destroyers were gone without a trace. On Earth, Admiral Hayes stood in the Pentagon's command center, watching the battle. Through long-range sensors, the alien fleet had seemed unstoppable when it first appeared at the edge of the solar system. Now it was being systematically destroyed by a single ship that officially didn't exist. "My God," whispered Defense Secretary Cooper. "How is this possible?" Dr. Wells was studying the energy readings from the battle. "The power output from the Defiant is off the charts. It's drawing energy from somewhere, but not from any source I can identify. It's like the ship has access to power from outside our universe." President Blake watched the display showing alien ships disappearing one by one. "Should we be worried that whoever is controlling that ship might decide we're a threat too?" Before anyone could answer, Captain Morrison spoke up from his position at the communications console. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Defiant. It's directed specifically at us." "Put it through," Admiral Hayes ordered. A woman's voice filled the command center, calm and professional despite the battle raging around her ship. "This is Captain Laura Bennett of the HSV Defiant. Please do not be alarmed by what you're witnessing. I'm currently engaged in defending Earth from an unprovoked attack. The situation will be resolved shortly." President Blake leaned toward the microphone. "Captain Bennett, this is President Blake. We need to talk." "I agree, Mr. President. However, I'm a bit busy at the moment. I'll be in touch as soon as I've dealt with these uninvited guests." The transmission ended, and everyone in the command center turned their attention back to the battle display. In space, Supreme Commander Zenth Kara was discovering what it felt like to be completely outmatched. His fleet of 2,000 ships had been reduced to less than 800 in just 5 minutes of fighting. The human ship moved through his formation like death itself, appearing wherever his ships were thickest and carving through them with weapons that seemed to bend the eye. Laws of physics. "Commander," his tactical officer called out, "the Thulik battleship Dominator is trying to ram the human ship." Zenth Kara watched as the massive alien vessel, big enough to carry 50,000 troops, accelerated toward the Defiant at full speed. The human ship didn't move. Instead, it seemed to become even more translucent, until it was barely visible. The Thulik battleship passed right through the space where the Defiant had been and smashed into 3 of Zenth Kara's own ships, destroying all 4 vessels in a massive explosion. "It's not really there," Zenth Kara realized. "The ship exists in some kind of parallel space. That's why our weapons can't hit it." His science advisor drifted closer. "Commander, if that's true, then how is it able to affect our ships?" Before Zenth Kara could answer, the Defiant demonstrated exactly how. The human ship suddenly became solid again, appearing directly above his flagship. A beam of pure white light lanced down from the Defiant, passing through the flagship's shields like they didn't exist. The beam struck the ship's main power core, but instead of exploding, the core simply stopped working. Every system on the flagship went dark, leaving them floating helplessly in space. Captain Bennett's voice came over the emergency radio system. "Commander Zenth Kara, your ship has been disabled but not destroyed. I'm giving you and your remaining fleet one chance to withdraw from human space. If you refuse, I will be forced to destroy every ship in your fleet." Zenth Kara looked around his darkened bridge at the faces of his crew. These were warriors who had conquered star systems, but now they looked terrified. Through the view screen, he could see the Defiant hanging motionlessly in space, surrounded by the wreckage of hundreds of alien ships. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked quietly. His tactical officer checked his backup systems. 732 ships remaining, Commander. We've lost over 60% of our fleet." "And how long did this battle last?" 7 minutes and 18 seconds, sir. 7 minutes. In 7 minutes, a single human ship had destroyed more than 1,200 of the galaxy's finest warships. Zenth Kara had commanded fleets for 30 years, and he had never seen anything like it. "Commander," his communications officer said, "I'm receiving surrender requests from 47 different ships. The Korvax squadron leader is asking permission to retreat. The Zephyr Wing commanders want to know if they should abandon their attack runs." Zenth Kara closed his eyes. The Valdaran collective had sent its greatest fleet to humble humanity, and instead they had discovered that humans were something far beyond their understanding. "Open a channel to the Defiant," he said finally. Captain Bennett's image appeared on his emergency screen. She was a woman in her 40s, with graying hair and calm blue eyes. She sat in what looked like a simple command chair, with no visible crew around her. "Captain Bennett," Zenth Kara said, "I formally request permission to withdraw my fleet from human space." "Permission granted, Commander. I suggest you spread the word that human space is off limits to hostile forces. We prefer to be left alone." Zenth Kara nodded slowly. "May I ask how many ships like yours exist?" Captain Bennett smiled slightly. "Enough, Commander. More than enough." As the surviving alien ships began their retreat, Captain Bennett opened a new communication channel to Earth. "Mr. President, I believe we need to have that conversation now. With your permission, I'd like to bring my ship to Earth orbit." On Earth, President Blake looked around at his advisors. They all nodded. "Captain Bennett, you have permission to approach. We have a lot of questions." "I'm sure you do, Mr. President. And I promise you'll have all the answers you need. But I should warn you. The truth about the Defiant and ships, like it is going to change everything you think you know about humanity's place in the galaxy." As the sleek ship turned toward Earth, Admiral Hayes wondered if they were about to meet humanity's greatest protector or its most dangerous secret. Either way, she knew the world was about to change forever. The HSV Defiant docked at Earth's primary space station 3 days after the battle. President Blake, Admiral Hayes, Dr. Wells, and Defense Secretary Cooper boarded the mysterious ship with a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. They had no idea what to expect from the people who had built such an incredible weapon. Captain Laura Bennett met them at the airlock. She was a woman in her mid-40s with short gray hair and intelligent eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform with no visible rank insignia. Behind her stood an elderly man with wild white hair and thick glasses. "Mr. President," Captain Bennett said, extending her hand. "Welcome aboard the Defiant. This is Dr. Jonathan Gray, the ship's designer and my mentor." President Blake shook both their hands. "Dr. Gray, we've been looking for you for quite some time. You've been listed as dead for 15 years. Dr. Gray chuckled. "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, as Mark Twain once said. I'm sorry for the deception, but it was necessary for the project to succeed." Admiral Hayes looked around the ship's corridor. It was surprisingly ordinary. Clean white walls, normal lighting, nothing that suggested the incredible power she had witnessed. "How many people are on this ship?" "Including myself and Dr. Gray, 23, Captain Bennett replied. "We're a small crew, but we have help from other sources." "Other sources?" Dr. Wells asked. "That's part of what we need to explain," Dr. Gray said. "Please follow me to the main conference room. What you're about to learn will be difficult to believe." They walked through the ship, passing crew members who looked perfectly normal. These weren't superhuman soldiers or alien hybrids. They were regular people, mostly middle-aged, who nodded politely as the group passed. The conference room was simple, with a large table and chairs. Dr. Gray activated a holographic display that showed complex mathematical equations and diagrams. 15 years ago, Dr. Gray began, my research into dimensional manipulation yielded unexpected results. I wasn't trying to build weapons. I was attempting to create new energy sources by accessing parallel dimensions. He gestured to the equations on the display. The theory was simple. If multiple dimensions exist alongside our own, we might be able to draw power from them. What I discovered was far more significant. The holographic display changed to show what looked like a branching tree with thousands of interconnected lines. I discovered that our dimension is just one of an infinite number of parallel realities. In most of these realities, humanity developed along similar lines to our own. But in some, they developed very differently. President Blake leaned forward. What do you mean differently? Captain Bennett took over the explanation. Mr. President, in some dimensions, humanity faced extinction-level threats much earlier in their development. Wars with alien empires, cosmic disasters, attacks by beings from other dimensions. These alternate versions of humanity were forced to develop incredible technologies just to survive. Dr. Wells was studying the display intently. You're saying you made contact with alternate versions of humanity? Not exactly, Dr. Gray said. What I discovered was something even more remarkable. When a human civilization in any dimension faces complete extinction, something unusual happens. Their collective knowledge, their technology, their determination to survive, it all becomes accessible to humans in other dimensions. Admiral Hayes felt a chill. You're talking about some kind of shared consciousness across parallel realities? In a way, yes, Dr. Gray nodded. The Defiant isn't just powered by technology from our dimension. It draws knowledge and energy from countless human civilizations across infinite realities. Every time humanity anywhere faces annihilation, we learn from their struggle. Captain Bennett gestured to the walls around them. This ship exists partially in normal space and partially in what we call dimensional overlap, the space between realities. That's why enemy weapons pass through it and why our weapons can strike targets across impossible distances. Defense Secretary Cooper spoke up. But why keep it secret? Why not work with Earth's governments? Dr. Gray's expression grew serious. Because 15 years ago, when I first made contact with these parallel dimensions, I saw what was coming. I saw the wars, the alien empires that would eventually notice humanity, the threats we weren't prepared to face. So you decided to prepare defenses without telling anyone, President Blake said. I decided to create Guardians, Dr. Gray corrected. The Defiant isn't the only ship. There are others stationed throughout human space, watching and protecting. We've been quietly dealing with threats for over a decade. Admiral Hayes remembered the reports of alien fleets that had simply disappeared in contested space. How many ships like this exist? Enough, Captain Bennett said simply. Every major human colony, every trade route, every exploration fleet, they all have Guardians watching over them. Most people never know we're there. Dr. Wells was still studying the holographic display. Jonathan, this is incredible, but I have to ask, what's the cost? Drawing power from parallel dimensions existing partially outside normal reality, there have to be risks. Dr. Gray nodded slowly. There are. Each time we use the ship's full capabilities, we create small tiers in the dimensional barriers. Eventually, those tiers could attract attention from things that exist between realities, things that are best left undisturbed. How long can you keep this up? President Blake asked. As long as humanity needs protection, Captain Bennett replied. But I hope that won't be forever. The goal was never to become humanity's permanent guardians. The goal was to give our species time to develop, to grow strong enough to protect itself. She gestured to the display, which now showed a map of known space with human colonies marked in blue and alien empires in red. The galaxy is beginning to take notice of humanity. Word of our capabilities is spreading. Some species will want to ally with us. Others will see us as a threat to be eliminated. The age of humanity hiding in a corner of the galaxy is over. President Blake stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Earth spinning slowly below them. So what happens now? Do we reveal the existence of these guardian ships to the public? That's up to you, Mr. President, Dr. Gray said. We can continue operating in secret, protecting humanity from the shadows. Or we can work openly with Earth's government to establish humanity as a major galactic power. Admiral Hayes had been thinking about the implications. If we go public, every alien empire in the galaxy will want to know how many ships we have, where they're located, what their capabilities are. And if we stay secret, Defense Secretary Cooper added, we'll always be vulnerable to someone discovering the truth and using it against us. Captain Bennett smiled. Actually, I have a third option to suggest. She activated a new display showing recent communications from various alien species. Since the battle with the Valdaran fleet, we've received over 200 messages from smaller species across the galaxy. They're all asking the same thing. Would humanity be willing to protect them from the larger, more aggressive empires? President Blake turned from the window. They want us to become galactic peacekeepers? They want us to become what we've always been at our best, Captain Bennett said. Protectors of those who can't protect themselves. The galaxy is full of small, peaceful species that live in fear of conquest. We could offer them something no one else can, genuine protection with no strings attached. Dr. Wells looked excited. We could establish humanity as the guardian species of the galaxy, not conquerors but protectors. It would mean revealing some of our capabilities, Admiral Hayes pointed out. Not all of them, Dr. Gray said. Just enough to make it clear that attacking peaceful species under our protection would be a very bad idea. President Blake returned to his seat and looked around the table at the faces of his advisors and their hosts. Captain Bennett, Dr. Gray, you've been protecting humanity for 15 years without asking for anything in return. What do you think we should do? Captain Bennett and Dr. Gray exchanged glances. Finally, Captain Bennett spoke. We think humanity is ready to take its place as a major galactic power, not through conquest or intimidation, but through our willingness to stand up for what's right. The galaxy needs guardians, Mr. President. We've been doing the job in secret. Now it's time to do it openly. President Blake nodded slowly. Then that's what we'll do. Admiral Hayes, prepare a statement for the galactic community. As of today, Earth formally offers protection to any peaceful species threatened by aggressive powers. He turned to Captain Bennett and Dr. Gray. And I want you two to work with our diplomatic corps. If we're going to be guardians of the galaxy, we're going to do it right. As the meeting ended and the Earth officials prepared to return to the surface, Captain Bennett walked with them to the airlock. Mr. President, she said quietly, there's something else you should know. The knowledge we draw from parallel dimensions, it's not just about weapons and technology. It's about hope. Every version of humanity that has ever faced extinction has refused to give up. That's our greatest strength, and it's something that resonates across all realities. President Blake smiled. I'll remember that, Captain. Thank you for keeping us safe. As the shuttle carrying Earth's leaders departed, Captain Bennett stood at the observation window watching Earth turn slowly in the darkness.